Welcome to Recliner Reviews, and today we are talking about a movie that I would say is, not to give spoilers, so far one of our favorites that we're talking about, but so much to talk about, and that movie is
John Belushi.
You, how much for your wife?
Dan Aykroyd. After the gig, maybe we could, hang out together. The Blues Brothers.
Are you the police?
No, ma'am. We're musicians.
This is the, there's not going to be a surprise when we get to this later on, but the best Chicago movie.
Not Baby's Day Out?
Baby's Day Out is a close second, but this is number one. And there's always that great debate, Baby's Day Out, Blues Brothers, Baby's Day Out, Blues Brothers. But I think Blues Brothers takes the cake there. And I would also argue, this would be a huge argument that we would never get to the end of if we had a million people involved in the debate, but maybe the best comedy of the last 40 years.
Yeah, I feel like it's on everybody's list as one of the best comedies. Because I feel it's also it's iconic and everybody associates Chicago, Blues Brothers. Yeah, and plus it doesn't hurt to have a guy like Belushi, who's a once in a generation talent, leading up the movie.
Yeah, so 100%. Those are a bunch of the key points to why this worked, and also the plot being so unique, the elements of how they pulled this off, it being kind of a musical, but being so absurd. The absurdism it gets amped up throughout the entire movie, and then the peaks in the chase scene. Which I just watched this again a few weeks ago. I watched it a bunch as a kid and in my youth and probably didn't appreciate it properly at the time, and I watched it a few weeks ago. I was laughing my ass off through the whole last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It just gets more absurd and more absurd and more absurd. And there are key elements throughout the story from the very first scene all the way to the end of it having this absurdism that is just so subtle and then just goes to 100 at the end.
Yeah, the absurdity, the biggest absurdity in this movie is not a car crash. It's not the chases. It's not any of that. It is the fact that an orphanage is paying property taxes.
The county took a tax assessment of this property last month. They want $5,000.
$5,000, no problem. We'll have it for you in the morning.
In the city of Chicago.
Well, can we also point out, though, too, that property taxes being central to the ultimate Chicago movie is amazing?
Oh, it's absolutely, and it's perfect because of how ridiculous this is 1980. And we're talking about a $5,000 property tax bill in $1980, which is that's absurd as is. And so even then, property taxes in Chicago and surrounding area were absurd. And so, but yeah, that's the absurd thing for me is because, again, having worked in that realm, right,
yeah.
with politics is the simple fact that whether it's an orphanage, a church, or anything, wouldn't have some relationship with their aldermen who would then bend over backwards to make sure that they got what they needed is absurd.
Sure.
And the fact that they wouldn't even gone to the alderman and been like, hey, alderman, I need help. I got a $5,000 tax bill. I'm a church. We're an orphanage. Besides the fact that, in Illinois and in Chicago, they don't pay property taxes.
Right.
They're a 501c3. They don't pay property taxes. But one of the reasons why they use that as a storyline is partially for the absurdity, but also because I guess at the time, there was somebody in the Illinois legislature that was proposing that churches should pay property taxes.
Which makes it even more perfect. The idea that property taxes are so central to this plot as the biggest Chicago and Illinois movie is one thing, but that it has a historical tie is hilarious too. And the only thing that would make it even better is if there was an alderman involved, and he's like, yeah, put my campaign sign in your window, and then maybe we can make it work. If there was that kind of element to it too, it would be even more perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know if people outside of Chicago or outside of Illinois even understand how fantastic that is to have in the movie.
And going towards the backing information to it is they had to beg Jane Byrne to film this movie in the city of Chicago.
That's hilarious.
And then she finally like relented. But like in typical Chicago fashion, they filmed the scene in the county building at the end, right?
Yeah.
Where they're going to go pay the money in the county building. Which first, having spent 10 years of my life working in that building, I've always looked for wherever that location was, where they go around the corner and then they go to like the elevator. That does not exist. Like that does not exist.
Well, I'm sure part of the inside had to be studio.
I mean, I think they used the building. I think
Yeah.
they actually filmed in the county building, but they just kind of like reworked it. And so like I like map it out, be like, okay, well, if he entered from the Clark side, and then ran and then turned left, like how could he? Like I've often thought about this.
You know what you should have done on your last day when you worked there is you should have boarded up. You should have like been like running through the halls and then boarded up the doors as you left with the chairs and stuff.
I should have, yeah.
That'd have been great.
Yeah. But to the point about the county building is that this movie wouldn't have been made if the producers didn't get mob help. Because
Well, sure.
Because hear this out, the county building, it's rumored that at the time in 1980 that Cook County was basically being run by the mob. And so the mob convinced George Dunn to let them film the movie there.
See, isn't it kind of a bummer in some ways? I'm gonna make a spicy take that the mob is no longer kind of anything. It's kind of a bummer that we don't have the extra check against the real government. I don't think the mob is that much. Not to get on a tangent here, but I don't think the mafia is that much worse than the government.
Now, all I have to do is think of a clever line before I pull the trigger.
I mean, they are. I mean, the government is mafia.
Yeah,
right?
it's
I
just,
mean,
they're
isn't that-
both organized crime. So it's kind of a bummer. The mob now has like Richard's Bar in West Town and like a block of power, and it's all a bunch of old dudes.
Well, I mean, it's always been.
Shame.
It's always been.
Well,
a
I
bunch
know,
of
but
old
now it's
dudes,
like now gambling's legal and stuff. Like, still have Rosemont, I guess. But that
Yeah,
is
that-
hilarious.
We'll always have Rosemont. Rosemont.
That is hilarious. How many? This is like that's why it's so true to be a Chicago movie. And when we were talking about Ferris Bueller's Day Off, your qualification for a Chicago movie, if it's filmed in the suburbs, if it's about people in the suburbs, whatever, like this is filmed in the city, and not just like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the parade on Clark and LaSalle or wherever it is. Like this is in recognizable parts of Chicago for people that grew up in the city.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you do have.
You have the stuff in the county building downtown, but
Yeah, and you do have stuff in the suburbs as well, and,
Yeah.
and even as far out as Joliet for the prison. But
right. But people outside of people in New York or LA have never heard of Joliet.
yeah, for sure.
It's like a nod to people like us.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a truly iconic Chicago thing, especially when you think about the Chicago Blues. Not only Blues Brothers and the Blues Brothers Band, but thinking about like the scenes with like Johnny Lee Hooker playing his guitar. I mean, I know Ray Charles is not associated with Chicago, but like that, like the whole scene
Yeah.
that goes on there. I mean, it's just.
Which, by the way, the amount of people in this movie, Aretha Franklin, like
I have a note about
bananas.
this, is like the star power in this
It's
movie
incredible.
is incredible. And let me read some of the names, okay? Because I know some of them you're going to go, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
But I think there's one that is going to blow your mind. So John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Cab Calloway, which again, like if you're not big into that type of music, you may not understand, but like Cab Calloway is huge. Frank Oz makes an appearance as a guard. James Brown, Ray Charles, Shaka Khan, Carrie Fisher, Paul Rubens makes an appearance in this movie. Aretha Franklin, Joe Walsh makes an appearance in this movie. Steven Spielberg makes an appearance in this movie. But the two that most people don't get and don't see are Mr. T.
Bruh.
Mr. T
I
makes
knew
an
Mr. T
appearance,
was in it. Yeah.
and James Avery.
Bruh.
And for those who don't know James Avery, that's Uncle Phil from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I'm trying to like nail down the scene.
He's in the dancing scene outside of the thing with Ray Charles. He's in that scene.
Just like in the background.
He's a dancer. He's a dancer
wow.
in that. He's dancing in this movie.
That's wild.
Uncle Phil.
That's what. Oh, well, that's.
I mean, like, again, like with all of the names, and then like it just kind of bridges into the next like generation with Uncle Phil.
Right. So the 2 points about this, there are very few comedies that I can think of since then that have that kind of star power. Because like, they're like with him, like he blew up late. Like we recognize him from stuff he did after the fact. But there are a lot of people on that list that are huge when this movie came out. Like Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles. Like those are people that are huge. There are very few comedies that can have that kind of ensemble cast of star power as tertiary characters. The only thing that comes close are Adam Sandler's movies like Grown Ups, where he has Dan Patrick like as a minor character, and Shaquille O'Neal. But those movies kind of suck.
And there's the snap.
So it's amazing that a great comedy, and I would argue one of the greatest comedies, did that. And then two, the name that stands out there to me, and in the movie too, is Carrie Fisher, because this came out in 1980, and Star Wars: A New Hope came out in 1977. So in between, I believe it's in between. I think Empire Strikes Back came out in 80. So in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and New Hope's huge, Empire Strikes Back is huge. She's like, hey, I'm gonna be a minor character in this comedy.
Yeah,
with
and
Belushi.
can I give you a little tidbit on that whole thing?
Yeah.
Blues Brothers and Empire Strikes Back came out on the exact same day.
It's false. No way. Not this time. We created it. Not this time. No, not this time. It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction. We made it up. We made this one up. It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication. It never happened. It never happened. This one was invented by a writer.
June of 1980. I believe it's June 21st. I think it's actually on my birthday. It came out June 21st of 1980, or it's in the middle of June of 1980. And both of them movies came out on the same day.
Hey,
That's bananas.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Just one other name I want to throw in there before we talk a little bit more about the movie is, did you know that Paul Schaefer was actually in the Blues Brothers band?
No.
So Paul Schaefer was in the Blues Brothers band, but he was filming something else at the time that they were doing this movie, and so John Belushi kicked him out, said, "You're not loyal to the band." So Paul Schaefer didn't get a chance to be in Blues Brothers.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I'm still caught up in the Empire Strikes Back Blues Brothers double feature.
There you go.
That's like the most 80s thing I've ever heard, too.
Yeah.
Especially because it's on your birthday, too.
Yeah. I mean, it might not actually be
Well,
my
I mean,
birthday.
it's
It's like
close.
around my birthday. It's like a week around my birthday somewhere in there. I don't know the exact date, and I didn't, of course, write it down.
Not a chance.
I give her a lot of credit for doing that film, but also, like, her, like, so going back to the absurdity of it, her character just kind of, like, trying to assassinate them
Yeah.
throughout the movie, and you don't know why, is so freaking funny.
Yes.
Like, it's funnier to me. I said I watched it recently, and I hadn't seen it in years before then. It is hysterical, the reason you don't know why any of this is happening. And she, like, has an RPG and stuff, and, like, they're always brushing themselves off. Like, a lot of stuff throughout this movie, you don't really understand the, like, rising and falling action, and it makes it way funnier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about, like, all of the things that get put in, and then, like, they just arc throughout the entire movie.
Yes.
Like, even, like, the Illinois Nazis.
Illinois Nazis, which is a very quotable thing.
I hate Illinois Nazis.
Yes, which is very quotable and actually does have historical reference.
Just Skokie, yeah.
Well, even more than just Skokie. So I think it's a few years before this, I believe it was in the 70s, was you had this Illinois Nazis who wanted to march in Skokie of all places. And
Yeah.
Skokie has a very large Jewish population, and many Holocaust survivors were living in Skokie at the time. And so then, like, Skokie didn't want to let them, or wanted to let them, and then they sued, and they went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you can march, the Nazis can march.
Those bums won their court case, so they're marching today.
So the Nazis didn't end up marching in Skokie, They actually ended up marching in Chicago, in Marquette Park, where that scene is filmed with the bridge. It's in Marquette Park. That's where the actual Illinois Nazis marched. And a tie to Chicago, for better or for worse, with him being involved, Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of the city of Chicago, current resident and current person who has 9.5 fingers thanks to Arby's.
We have the meat.
Was one of the ones that marched against the Nazis at that march in Marquette Park.
That I did not know.
Yeah, a young. I can't confirm whether or not he had all 10 fingers at that time, or if the meat slicer at Arby's took the half of the finger, but it did happen at that time. Around
That's
that time.
wild.
So
this is the most. I'm learning so many freaking Chicago facts from you right now.
well, I mean, look, I'm happy to be able to drop some Chicago knowledge bombs there, including where they jumped the bridge. That's down by the Calumet fisheries, which go down to the Calumet fisheries, get yourself some good fried fish. I'm telling you, that's where you go.
Yeah, that I knew. And there's some like shots on the south side that I don't know if like a lot of people would recognize, but if you know, like this is like actually, to your point about Ferris Bueller and like these other movies, this is like actually the most Chicago-y
for sure
locations you can find.
I mean, all of the stuff up and down Maxwell Street, like the whole thing with Ray Charles and his shop, and the dancing that's there. That's Maxwell Street, and like you can go down there today and go see like all of these things, which is really cool.
Yeah. So back to why I think like the last 20 minutes or so of the chase is so funny and it keeps escalating. Is you don't know really where the stuff with the Nazis is going, other than it's a goof.
Yeah.
Like they tell them to go to 1060 West Addison, and it's like, oh, this is funny. Like these Nazis are stupid, and we all hate Nazis.
Get his address?
Of course. 1060 West Addison.
Let's go.
But then they end up in the chase, and then the National Guard and all this stuff, and all of it culminates in them, again, spoiler, getting arrested at the end.
Spoiler alert. Now,
After handing in the check. The fact that you don't know stuff as it's going on, or why it's happening, or where it's going, makes this movie way funny. For whatever reason, I just think it makes it way funnier.
Yeah.
And, the trip to get to the end.
Yeah.
Is way better.
And there's two other notes I just want to make is, in that opening scene where they're by the jail, apparently nobody told some of the guards that they were going to be filming this scene, because they had a helicopter that was filming, filming that exterior or whatever. And some of the guards actually shot at the helicopter because they thought that like somebody was planning a breakout, or like somebody was like spying on the jail.
Wild.
So like they were shooting at this helicopter.
That's wild. The other, I've lost this nugget in my head like 3 times already, so I just want to get out. The other Chicago factoid is now every time I pass like a men's hotel, like the Covenant Hotel, there's one by like a couple by me that are like clearly not functioning anymore, but are like still there. I think that a couple of them are like Chicago landmarks, right? They're like preserved by the city. That's what I think of every single time.
Yeah, SROs, single room occupancy.
Well, it ain't much, but it's home.
I never lived in one, never been in one, but my first apartment in the city was right next to the train, and the sound of it, people don't understand why I enjoy it. I don't know, the L soothes me. I like the faint sound of the L.
The elevated train by my window doesn't faze me anymore.
I think of the Blues Brothers all the time.
Yeah, of course.
The train going by.
Every time you look at the window, there's a train going by. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
Loved it.
So some money things with this here, real quick, is the budget for this movie. I've read 2 different things of what the budget for this movie was. One said $17.5 million, and one said $30 million. But the thing that gets me is that they said that Dan Aykroyd is on record as saying that a portion of that budget was actually spent on cocaine.
Cocaine.
No, of course.
For like the cast and the crew, so that this way they could stay awake during all of the shoots. And Belushi was just like going crazy with coke. And like there was a time that like they couldn't find him. Like Belushi just disappeared from set, and he wandered into somebody's house and like asks them for like a sandwich and a glass of milk, and Dan Aykroyd like goes up to the door and is like, "Hey, have you seen?" And they're like, "Oh, you're here for Jim Belushi." Or John Belushi. Jim Belushi's on my brain because he, unfortunately, this movie, while it's great, gave us Jim Belushi, which is not great.
Who's just a leech on his brother's success.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Yeah, he's the George Bush to Jeb Bush, if you ever seen the movie W. So you ruined it for Jeb. Jim,
please clap.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the John Belushi thing was like, oh, you're here for John? Like, yeah. And he's just sitting there like drinking milk and eating a sandwich.
That's
because like he's like everybody's buddy. Like apparently he's like everybody's buddy.
And I've heard that too about. I think it's true on other movies that he's been in. He always needed cocaine on the set. And then of course on SNL, like in the '70s, SNL was notorious for just having a ton of coke for the whole cast.
Yeah.
Which is kind of it's sad actually.
Yeah, I know. And like especially when we start talking about like Animal House.
Yeah.
You know they went to efforts to try and keep him sober, and clearly this was not the time for that.
Right.
But yeah, the one last thing I want to say is when they're at Bob's Country Bunker.
Bob's Country Bunker. Here we are. Bob's Country Bunker.
And they get the bill, which is $300 for what they drank. In $1980, a beer cost $1.50, which means that all of the people in the band had 20 beers that night.
Each had 20?
Each had 20.
That's believable.
I mean, look, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how long they spent at Bob's Country Bunker, but still, that's big.
I mean, it's a lot. Yeah.
That's a big bill. Like that's a lot of beer to drink, you know?
Yeah. And that scene's also hilarious. And those scenes are also sustained by how great the music is too.
Oh yeah.
Like even if you're not with the comedy for whatever reason, like you're engaged with it just based off the music.
Yeah, for sure.
The last thing I want to say, did you see Blues Brothers 2000?
Oh God.
Written by Dan Aykroyd and John Landis.
Unfortunately, yes.
I saw it like when it came out as like a kid because my parents loved the Blues Brothers and I saw it a bunch in the 90s before I even understood why it was a great movie. And we saw Blues Brothers 2000, the thing on like DirecTV pay-per-view. Don't remember any of it, just remember obviously it was bad and they tried doing the movie without Belushi is stupid. But we always talk about like bad sequels that should never happen. This might be one of the all-time, from the fall from the original, that might be the biggest one.
Yeah, I mean, because you don't have the same, like it is the same characters, but it's not the same characters, you know? And so like you just can't, it was a real bummer. 100%. And every time Jim Belushi gets out there and is living in the shadow of his brother.
Hoisting the Stanley Cup, World Series, whatever.
You know, and doing the, Joliet Jake routine, even though he's not his brother, like, God, it pains me. It really pains me.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
But anyway, this movie was great.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm going back
Fantastic.
to what I said, maybe the best comedy. I'd have to really adjudicate that and talk about it at length, but one of the best comedies the last 40 years, maybe ever.
Yeah, because it's like, it's subtle too. Like there's subtlety in the humor, but there's also like kind of knock you over the head, like silly humor, but like it's a good meld and you don't like feel one way or the other. It's not like a Jim Carrey movie where you're like, I'm getting slapstick this entire movie. There's a little bit of slapstick that's in there, but then it's also like a lot of like subtlety and
makes you think, which makes everything better.
Yeah.
For the score, you
can go first. Yeah.
I think this actually, I'm between high 7s and low 8s. I think this, I'm gonna go 8-1.
So I'm gonna go a little oppo. I'm gonna go lower. And the reason I'm gonna go lower is because I feel like some people didn't like this movie.
Really?
Yeah, and I feel like people in the South, because like even at the time, like late 70s, early 80s, racism is still very much a thing. It is. They were very much not happy about like the amount of like African American musicians that were in this movie. And so I'm going to say it's going to go lower, and I'm going to say 7.2.
Wow. We could not be farther apart. What is it?
7.9?
Oh, I was between 7.9 and 8.1. I don't know of a comedy that jumps into the 8s. I don't know why.
I mean, look, I think it's 10 out of 10. Like,
Yeah.
you give me the number. Like,
well,
it's
nothing
10
can
out
be
of
a 10.
but-
That's like the figure skating rules. If you call
Look,
something,
I'm not the Russian judge.
if you
I'm
call
gonna-
something a 10, then nothing can be higher than a 10.
Well,
If you
I
see
don't think
Blues
very,
Brothers,
I don't think anything can get higher than this. So, that's,
All right,
I mean,
we
that's
should
just
all
my
pack
personal
it up
opinion.
and
I
not
mean,
make movies anymore.
you know.
According to
Yeah,
Chris Santino.
yes, don't make any more comedies. No more comedies.
We're done here.
Yeah, we're done. Pack it up.